are this is the things which we'll be discussing about. We will be discussing everything related to Palo Alto about these topics. So
Mhm,
uh, we will go through Palo Alto and architecture, which will contain everything, right? Everything in
mhm,
if we talk about topics, let's consider this. We will be
mhm,
roaming around this figure, right? You can
mhm,
see we will be talking about LAN, internet,
mhm,
and firewall,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
Management will be configuration. So this is
mhm.
basic and minimum diagram which will we go around, and then we will learn everything on this, except
Okay.
how we will be
Mhm,
creating policy from lane, and how we'll be
mhm,
accessing LAN network and everything.
mhm,
And after that we will also adding the DMG part here, and how the and if we talk about architecture and platform, we will be
mhm,
sharing the architecture of PA firewall, how it is built, and how it is working, and
mhm,
in terms of hardware and software, right?
mhm,
How software
mhm,
is working, how single pass parallel processing hardware is working. It is containing single pass parallel processing hardware. Let me just write down here.
mhm,
Suppose we are talking about single pass pal Palo Alto architecture, so we will be
mhm,
learning architecture as it is mainly in SP3 architecture.
mhm,
So we will be talking about SP3 architecture here, where we will be have
mhm,
software and hardware, and then single pass
mhm,
architecture. I have same discussed SP3. So we will have
mhm.
hardware and software in these topics, and this is very big topic. I would say it will take
Mhm.
time. This topic,
Okay.
once you understand this topic, you will have little bit access, like how the Palo Alto will be working. After flow logic is something which is very needed to work in a production environment, how the product flow traffic flow is happening, right? So we will
Mhm,
be talking about this as well. So flow logic is something how your traffic is going from ingress interface, and how the actual egress interface of the firewall is going. So it will be mainly in ingress and egress fire interface, and what the activities, including content ID, app ID. I'll be talking about content ID, app ID here in Palo Alto and architecture and
mhm,
single pass architecture. Content ID, app ID, and you will be having user ID. How these are working in flow logic, we will be discussing. It will also take time. And initial
mhm,
configuration, I'll help initial configuration with the help of lab. That will help you understand in terms of CLI and GUI. So that will help. So initial configuration, what will be having in initial configuration? We will have how the interfaces are configured, how will be getting management interface access, management interface access. After that you will have access of firewall, right? So you will
mhm,
have this all information in initial configuration. Let's see
mhm,
this Palo Alto firewall, how we are going to set up in the environment. So we will have management first. We know that 192.168.1.1 is a default. We will be discussing all that. I'm just giving you the review right now. So 192.168.1.1 is uh, something which will help us to configure and will get the access of Palo Alto environment. How will be getting it? So initial configuration, after setup, or after configuring, or after taking the management access, what things we will be configuring in the Palo Alto. So we will be configuring interfaces, we will be configuring routes, we will be configuring zones, because it is zone based firewall mainly.
mhm. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, so we will be configuring security policy after to give you the basic internet access after net policies. So net policy also we will be configuring. You can I'll share the notes. That's not an issue. Don't write. I'm just giving you the overview right now. So
Okay.
what will be going through all this. So after initial configuration, suppose you have access of the Palo Alto firewall right now by a management
Mhm,
port, and you have configured everything to get the access to Palo Alto firewall, to get the access to LAN users, which is there in the interfaces somewhere in the firewall, because we have configured initially. Interfaces has been configured for LAN, interfaces has been configured for WAN interfaces. management
Mhm.
interface also configured. Three interfaces has been configured properly, right? So we will have
Mhm.
initial configuration for the Palo Alto firewall. Got it?
Mhm. Okay.
Yeah. So we will be configuring this, and initial access to the system I shared, right? Initial access means management access of the system. Once you have the
Mhm.
management access of the Palo Alto firewall, you will have
Mhm.
everything. So initially, how will we you getting the access of Palo Alto firewall? We will be discussing it here in terms of GLI and COI, CLI and GUI, right?
Mhm.
We
Mhm.
are good,
Yes.
right? What we are going to discuss, we are good with this, right? Configuration management is something what we have to configure in terms of management. Suppose you have Palo Alto firewall and you are going to configure management. So we are configuring management in terms of everything. Suppose you have to configure manage services. We have to configure DNS. You have to configure. Uh, do have labs. We'll share it later, but right now I'm only discussing about this part, what we'll be doing it.
Mhm.
So management is big thing. I mean, whatever the configuration you are going to provide to the management. If management doesn't have NAT, it will not work. If management interface doesn't have DNS, it will not work. If management interface doesn't have Palo Alto network services update, it will not work. Because if management have Palo Alto updates, it will not work just because it will not update anything which is there in the Palo Alto. Because
Mhm.
management interface doesn't have NAT, suppose, then how will it be going to update everything related to Palo Alto, like licenses, like something is going to
Mhm.
update suppose wildfire, and
Mhm.
antivirus is update. If Palo Alto have, they will not be able to push it to the system, right? So we will be
Mhm.
configuring management very properly. In management, service interfaces are there, service connections are there, so we will be configuring all that. Service connection is nothing but uh, interface, kind of interface which provides the direct connection to the services of Palo Alto, like I just said, right? DNS and TP, other Palo Alto updates configuration, right? So these will be configuring. We are in management. License and software update and installation. We will be checking how we are going to update everything related to license, related to software, like how we are going to update the version in Palo Alto, how we are going to install the licenses, how we are going to install the certificates, how we are pushing it to the devices. Everything we will be
Mhm.
covering here. We already have licenses because we have purchased the firewall, and then support will come along with the firewall as an help. So you will have the code for licenses, you have everything just to install it somewhere. Farana, please let me know if your my voice is clear to you.
Yeah, it's clear.
Okay.
Yeah, I can hear fine.
Yeah, thanks. So account administration. Account administration is something about the roles and response. I mean, authorization. You need to configure administration for the account, right? Either it depends on the access, right? You are going to provide the access or not. It is locally and it is using radius. You might have heard radius, right? If you are working in.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Yes.
so it is regarding radius. It is locally configuration of administrator, and it is along with the radius. We will be configuring radius on the device, and it will help us to provide authentication or administration part for the firewall. So we will
Mhm.
be adding multiple administration.
The firewall is not like an application where there should be a lot of people, a lot of users for it. You know what I mean, right? It should be only the administrators, which is not. It's not like an application that you can have a lot of people use it or access it, right?
Yeah, actually, firewall will be allowed to like users will not be able to definitely use it, the firewall
Mm-hmm.
portal. Only the
Mm-hmm.
admins who
Yeah.
is managing and supporting the firewall, creating, configuring the policies will be able to use it. So we will not be able to configure one by one everything, right? So we also need to be able to configure multi-factor authentication also here, right? Directly in firewall. What is the difference between radius and account administration? This is locally configured. This will help only for user ID and password, right? Which we have. given to the administration part while configuring Palo Alto. And this will help you radius, whatever the functionalities we have for radius will be given to the administration while login to the firewall, while managing firewall, right? So it will be given to the user which is configured in radius. So what we will be doing is we will be just adding the radius part, radius server IPs. Along with that we will be adding the required information to the Palo Alto firewall, and it will um, help us to log into the firewall as an administrator.
Yes. Okay.
Getting my point? So this is
Yes.
locally configured. This is using the Texas radius, any of the device. So we will be checking it using radius,
Yes.
right?
Okay.
So we are
Got
good
it.
till here, right? So we will be discussing all this. Admin roles, like which roles you want to provide to which resource. You can suppose L1 you only want to provide read only. If we have variations providing roles. Along with read only you want to provide basic AC or monitoring, ACC and monitoring access to the admin, right? And if you want to provide L1, suppose L1 you want to provide the monitoring access only along with the
Mm-hmm.
read access, so you can provide. And if it comes to L3 or L4, you want to provide the super admin access. Super admin access is something which can modify the internal access which has been provided also. And admin access is, for L3 is something write access, right? So write access cannot modify the admin access already provided to the firewall. And the difference between super admin and write access, admin access is admin only write things, but he or she cannot modify the access which has been provided to L1, L2, but super admin can do.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So interface configuration, it is almost, we almost have, suppose I, let me just scroll down. Suppose we have multiple interface. Suppose we have multiple interfaces. So we are talking about interface configuration where we have multiple interfaces available in the firewall. Suppose we have given this to WAN, we have given this to LAN, we have given this to DMZ. But sometimes what happens, you want to provide few access. Suppose LAN users, we have, for LAN users we have multiple access.
Mm-hmm.
LAN interface. We want to provide as an HR, and also we want to provide as an employee for only LAN interface. LAN interfaces are E3 EAT0.2, right? So we want to segregate this access in HR, employees, salesperson, right? And some management as a manager, the limited traffic to management or manager we can say. So we want to provide LAN interface ETH02 to all the four members, but we don't want to segregate the traffic. So we will be creating sub interface for the same. We will be configuring all this, right? Got it? So we will be checking how we can configure the traffic, uh, Ethernet sub interface like ETH02.1,
Mm-hmm.
ETH02.2. So we will be configuring all of this. Like suppose if ETH02.1 we have provided to HR, ETH02.2 we have provided to employees, right? Like this 2.3 we can provide to sales and management, right? So we will be configuring. So this is very bit critical. If this is not configured properly, we will not be able
Mm-hmm.
to do it, because After this we need to create zones. Zones is something which is important. We are not going to configure like you might have seen that a Cisco ASA checkpoint we are configuring directly through Ethernet interfaces, but here in Palo Alto we are configuring through zones. We are collecting it all interface in zones. Suppose we have
Okay.
provided E30/2 and E30/3 in zones. We
Mm-hmm.
have provided the same zone. We can give any name, suppose trust zone. We have trust zone and we have provided all the interfaces name in trust zone, and then this zone will be configured in the security policies. So it will have Ethernet 02, it will have Ethernet 03, so it will be configured like this, right?
Okay.
And
Okay.
this
I think.
interface has been
Mm-hmm.
configured in trust zone. It will not be able to configure in any other zone
Mm-hmm.
except trust zone,
Mm-hmm.
because it has been part of already with the trust zone. Suppose this is E301, it is untrust zone. If we have configured under untrust zone, then it will not be able to be a part of trust zone anyways, because we have WAN traffic on Ethernet 01, right? So WAN traffic is untrust zone, WAN traffic, right? It is going to internet, so it is untrust zone, and we will not be able to give trust zone to this E301, E2, E1, right? Interface 1.